What's going on, everybody? We are back. We got episode number 145 of the Club and Sub podcast. This week, we're talking UFC Nashville. Cory Sandhagen taking on Rob Font. Fantastic main event and really a fantastic card top to bottom as far as fight nights go. I like it a lot. I think it's going to be very entertaining. I have a lot of betting interest in the card as well. But before we do that, guys, if you like the show, drop a like, subscribe, comment, share, all that good stuff. Help the algorithm out a bit. And yeah, I mean, let's briefly talk about last week. For me, it was another fucking disaster. The year has not been kind to me thus far. It's been a very bad year. The last 2 months is like my worst 2-month stretch I've ever had. But, you know, I mean, that's part of the game. You know, some bad breaks, some bad variants, some bad bets, just some bad sizing. Lot of things have gone wrong, but we got a lot of year left, so I'm excited for it. Bottom line is just got to keep chugging, work harder, and the results should manifest themselves eventually. But with that said, let's just talk about how disastrous it was. I lost on the card 6.19 units. Only bet I won. I did hit the under 2.5 in Poirier Gagey at plus 112. I lost Jan Blachowicz. I had 1.7 units on him at minus 113. Close decision. I don't think it's. What do you think?
I think a lot of people were a bit crazy. I feel like about the round 2, like, oh, it was totally Alex. Like that's all I'm hearing on Twitter.
You mean round 3?
Like, I thought it was round 2.
No, round 2. Alex almost finished him at the end of round 2.
Was it? Okay, so never mind.
Yeah, round 3. Sorry. I think what you're thinking of.
Yeah.
I don't. It is weird. Like I kind of thought Jan won, but at the same time, it's like the optics of Jan being completely gassed out and having his leg destroyed were obviously pretty ugly. I did think he outworked Pereira in round 3, though. But, I mean, it is what it is. I don't really have any issue with the decision, to be quite honest. Marcos Rogerio de Lima. This was crazy. So I had 2 bets on this night that both went off at about the same time. Had about $1 of CLV on both. I had de Lima at like an average of like minus 120, and I had Danny Sabatello at minus 150. And Derek Lewis just comes out the gate like a fucking wild man, lands a flying knee, puts him out. Sabatello, about 30 seconds later, gets choked out by a guillotine. And I'm just sitting there like questioning what the hell just happened to my night. I don't know much to say about the fight. Look, I mean, I was actually pretty confident going into it, which is rare. I always feel nervous about big bets. Yeah, I mean, that Derek Lewis is a wild man. Obviously, he's pulled shit out of his ass like this before. There's just nothing to really take away from it. I can't say whether it was a good bet or bad bet. I have no strong opinion. It just happened. It is what it is. It's very unfortunate.
Especially to pick them.
Yeah.
Or where you got it, minus 125.
Yeah. I mean, it was I mean, it was a great number.
Right.
I just don't think you can take much from the fight. And then I had Michael Chiesa, also had a ton of CLV here, had him plus 165. This is a bad bet. Honestly, I should have paid a bit more attention to Chiesa just not really being active, doing the commentary stuff. He clearly just, he got in on 2 deep attempts on takedowns, couldn't get Holland down, and then pretty much just called it a day and quit, if we're being completely honest,
Yeah.
And then I had a unit on Trevin Giles, and yeah, I mean, he got wiped out. So it was a cool performance by Bonfim. I still have some of the same questions about Gabriel Bonfim that I had coming into that fight, but Giles didn't answer them, and Bonfim blew through him. It was a very cool performance, and it was kind of hilarious how Bonfim was like very clearly telegraphing he was trying to set him up for a guillotine, and Trevin still just stuck his head right into it. So yeah, all in all, disastrous night, disastrous weekend. It's been a rough 2 months, but I like this card. How was your week, Lags?
Profitable, but not too happy about it in general. So it started off good. So obviously had the under 2.5 rounds, had a unit and a half, under 2.5 rounds in the Chiesa Holland fight. Had a unit and a half on that. Thought that was a pretty good bet there. Had a unit on CJ Vergara minus 160. Again,
was a
good bet there. And then finished the night, had a unit and a half on Dustin Poirier minus 140, which did win the first win the first round on 2 judges' scorecards. And then obviously we know got head kicked in the second round. So bad bet at minus 140. It's tough to say.
It's hard to say. I mean, you have to see that. I think you have to see that play out past a round and a half. But
I would say at least like 3 rounds. Yeah, like 3 rounds maybe.
I did think Gagey looked pretty good in round one. Like I was kind of
Yeah.
surprised Poirier won the first, honestly. But it was a great fight. I mean, for as long as it lasted. At least you didn't lay juice on the over.
Yeah. Shout out to John cashing the contrarian under.
That's about the only thing I catch. It literally, actually, not about. It is literally the only thing I catch last week. But yeah, I mean, without further ado, let's hop into this card. It's a fun card.
Yep.
First fight of the night: Ode Osborne, Asu Amabayev. I haven't taken a position here yet, but I'm probably going to end up with a small play on Ode. I know there's a lot of people are excited about Amabayev, and I think stylistically, I don't think people are generally wrong. Obviously, on paper, it's stylistically a poor matchup for Ode, with Amabayev being a wrestler and Ode having at times in the past showcased a poor bottom game. At the same time, though, I think it's a bit more complicated than that, just in the fact that Amabayev really hasn't fought. Like, he's had 2 fights against UFC level or close to UFC level competition, and that was Tagir Ulanbekov like 5 years ago, and he got absolutely wiped out in that fight, pretty much everywhere. And then he fought Zach Makovsky last year, who obviously Makovsky was in the UFC for a while, but he's 40. You know, he's kind of at the end of his time as a mixed martial artist. And the truth is, Makovsky got robbed in that fight, and Amabayev looked bad. So it's like the rest of his tape, it's not bad, but I don't even know really how much to put into it. It's like I've seen him fight 2 guys who are at or around like UFC level, and he's looked terrible in both of those fights. He's very, very small for the division, and he can't strike worth a shit. So he's got to get on top of Ode here, and he's got to hold him down. If he gets there, I think he could potentially hold him down, but I mean, Ode's going to be a lot bigger than him and a lot longer than him. He's a lot faster. He's just generally the much better athlete. So I think he's going to eat a lot of shots trying to get in on Ode early here. Like, he needs to go very, very aggressive to get to Ode in this fight. And I don't think it's going to be very, very easy. And additionally, it's like, you know, it's kind of hard to take down guys that are a lot bigger than you. You know, he needs to get like really, really clean entries here, because if he ends up in a body lock, taking down someone as much taller than him as Ode is going to be pretty problematic. And, you know, Ode was a college wrestler. Like, people forget that. And he looked really bad on the ground against Kelleher, but Kelleher's a lot better than Amabayev is, and a lot bigger and a lot more physical. So I don't know. I see the stylistic advantages for Amabayev here. I could see what Pepe's saying with the sub 3. I do think if he's able to get him down consistently, he's probably going to wear him out and finish him. I'm kind of thinking I'm probably going to take a poke, just because, I mean, look, I think this guy's similar to Maxim from a couple weeks ago, except Maxim's a better athlete and a better striker. So I think Sigi's a much worse version of him, and obviously it's a gigantic jump in competition here. So I lean Ode. I'm not like passionate about it. What do you think?
Well, I'm definitely not excited about Amabayev, kind of like how you started it off. But I mean, his just style, I think, is one, like you alluded to, that's going to cause Ode problems. I mean, on the regional, I mean, that's the thing. In the UFC, not a lot of guys are looking to take him down, but on the regional scene, it's like pretty low-level guys, in my opinion, are taking him down, holding him down before he's guard subbing them. So it's like Amabayev can probably control him pretty easily, I feel like. But yeah, I like Pepe's angle there, the late sub. I feel like that's probably in play.
Yeah, fair enough. We'll see what happens. I'm still waiting on this line.
Yeah.
Sean Woodson, Dennis Bazooka. Have you looked at it? And if so, what are your thoughts?
I'll be honest. No, I was just going to open up with that. No, I haven't, because that was literally put together last night.
Yeah, I'm going to probably end up betting Woodson here. I haven't yet, but I don't know. I mean, Dennis is like, he's tough. I think he's a competitor. He's going to go for it. But he's also, I mean, his best skill is probably grappling, but he's not a very good wrestler at all. He's a pretty bad striker, pretty defensively void. I don't think he's got the best cardio ever. And now he's fighting Woodson, and it's like, yeah, you know, if he could get on top of Woodson and consolidate a takedown, he could probably cause him some serious issues. But I mean, Woodson's going to be really, really tough to take down for him. I think it's going to be really tough for him to get inside on Woodson. He's a lot taller and a lot longer. I mean, Woodson's a giant for the division. He's got, I'll tell you right now, 5 inches of height and almost 9 inches of reach. He's just a much more precise striker, much more accurate. He hits harder, much harder to hit. and he's just, I mean, he's got more meaningful experience. He's got a number of UFC fights and a number of UFC wins. I just think it's a very tough fight for Bazooka, especially on short notice. I know his whole camp's talked about how he's been ready and been trying to keep in shape for a fight recently. So I'm sure he'll show up in shape, but at the same time, like, staying ready and staying in shape is not the same thing as like being in a camp and trying to peak at a specific time. So I think minus 175 is decent for Woodson. I feel like
I was to say the only thing I was going to add here is what's interesting to me, like laying that kind of a chalk, and not that I'm, trying to say against it. 4 different opponents, like that switch up for like a fighter, I just feel like it's super just tough,
Yeah, I get that. But I do think just Woodson's got a number of edges in this fight. So we'll see what happens. Fair. I lean Woodson, probably going to bet it. Moving on, Jake Hadley, Cody Durden. What are your thoughts here, Lex?
Should be a great fight. I think Durden's probably going to have some early wrestling success here and then probably fade off like he tends to. I'll be honest. I think Hadley's got the better striking here. I think he's got the better cardio here. It's just more or less, can Durden hold him down for the majority of the fight here? That's kind of my only pause with Durden. I just don't think there's a ton of finishing upside on his side. Not that he doesn't have a ton of finishes like you touched on previously to me before. But I feel like Durden, for the most part, just has to control him for 15, which he could, but he just puts himself in a lot of sticky situations. Even with going back and watching the Charles Johnson fight, like the end of the first round, like he ends up on top of him, and like the last 10 seconds, just his neck just gets right in there, ends up in a triangle, and it's pretty deep. And I'm like, oh, well, I didn't really remember that watching that live, but yeah, no, I lean the Durden side, just not super confidently.
Yeah, I bet Durden small. My degree of confidence in it comes down to how likely you think Hadley is to sub him in this fight. Because I'm pretty sure Durden is going to get him down whenever he wants, if he wants to. Hadley's just not a very good defensive wrestler, and Durden is a very, very good offensive wrestler. I actually think Durden kind of, because he has like gas tank issues at times, probably gets a little disrespected by the market for what he is. Like, we see guys who can just, and even when he's gassed out, like his last fight, he landed 3 takedowns in round 3, against Charles Johnson to win that fight. The guy will continue to try to fight through his fatigue. So I'm pretty sure he can get takedowns here, because I don't think Hadley's a great wrestler. And I think there's a chance he could control Hadley here, just in general, if he gets the top position. I don't really, Hadley's a very dangerous jiu-jitsu player, which is kind of what scares me, because you touched on it. We've seen Durden get subbed a number of times and put his head in places it shouldn't be. We even saw Carlos Mota get like deep on armbar attempts against him. At the same time, I do think if Durden like recognizes what's coming, in particular, he likes to go to that omoplata sweep all the time, and he's really, really slick at it. But if he can get past that and past the half guard, I think he can control Hadley here. But yeah, like Pepe said, this is kind of my thing. Like, if I thought it was a low percentage outcome, I would have bet Durden pretty big in this spot. But I do sort of think Hadley's going to put him in danger there. I don't think it's going to play out on the feet much, but if it does, I kind of have this like, I don't want to say it's a hot take. Like, I'm not going to say Durden's better than Hadley there. Hadley's striking looks better than Durden's. At the same time, it's like Hadley was losing the stand-up to Mitch Raposo a couple fights ago. Like, Mitch Raposo is not a very good fighter. He fought Carlos Candelario, and eventually his body work kind of got to Candelario. But even in that fight, he was, he lost the first round, I think, to Candelario striking, who's not a very good striker. And so, like, I look at it and I'm like, man, Hadley striking looks prettier than Durden's, but this guy has gotten outlanded and outstruck by some pretty mid strikers. And Durden, despite his striking looking ugly, stayed like moderately competitive with Chris Gutierrez at distance and was competitive with Charles Johnson at distance. I kind of think the stand-up's going to be a lot closer than what the market thinks about it. But with all that said, again, I'm nervous about the gas tank, and I'm very, very nervous about the Hadley sub. So I'm not really passionate about it. I think it's a very competitive fight. I will say, I think if this goes 15 minutes, I'd favor Durden pretty heavily in a decision, just because I do think he can get this fight down at a pretty high clip. But yeah, I'm not passionate. I might take a shot at the under, just I think it kind of covers some bases there, like pretty well, with Durden in the under.
I know we were talking about pretty much like how you just mentioned there with the Hadley decision, that I struggle to see him winning a decision if it goes 15. I think Durden decision only if it's a decent number.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that completely. I think Durden decision only if it's plus would be amazing. I don't know if it is or not, but
it's not even out yet. I don't
okay.
think.
Yeah. So I lean Durden, but I mean, we'll see. Moving on, another interesting fight here. Billy Currantillo taking on Damon Jackson. I have another bet here. Small bet on Jackson for me. I'd probably bet Jackson pretty big if it wasn't for how shit he looked against Ige. Like, he just seemed pretty much terrified from minute one and just didn't want to engage him. I think he's got the tools to honestly wreck Billy in this fight. I like Billy. I feel, I shouldn't even say I feel like the narrative, and obviously with every narrative there's some degree of truth, but the narrative around Billy is he just makes guys work so hard they gas out and then he breaks them. And to a degree that's true, but also I think actually looking at like Billy's career, it is pretty interesting some of the guys that he's broken, like historic gassers like Alexander Hernandez, Kyle Nelson, Spike Carlisle, Carmelo Kirk. It's not like he's going out there and breaking really, really good fighters, and in some of those fights, his grappling has looked truly atrocious. I don't think he's got much takedown defense at all. He's very easy to get down. And I actually think on bottom, he's pretty horrendous. I know he's gotten up against a bunch of these guys, but again, the best grappler he's fought is maybe Carlisle. I mean, none of these guys are anywhere close to Damon Jackson, and Carlisle was dead gassed out and still getting takedowns and reversing position and controlling him late in the round 3. Like, we saw Billy Currantillo get controlled by Spike Carlisle for 9 minutes in that fight, despite being gassed out. And so I look at this fight, it's like, yeah, I mean, Billy's better on the feet. He's probably got a cardio edge, but even that, I kind of think people are putting, like, Jackson, he slowed a bit against Rosa and he slowed a bit against Argueta. But against Rosa, he ate a spinning elbow that literally emptied like half the blood in his body, like in that round 3. And still, by the way, spent the last 2.5 minutes of that round in top position. And then the same thing against Argueta. He got wobbled and hurt early in the round and then managed to get to Argueta's back late in that round and basically control him for the last minute and a half of the round. So it's like these gas outs by Jackson are just, I mean, they're not really gas outs. He slowed down a little bit in high-paced fights. And I kind of view that in this fight, I think he's going to be able to get takedowns late in the fight if he wants them. My fear is just how averse to grappling he was against Ige, and that'll happen here. But I do think if he comes out and goes for it, he is going to get Billy down and he's going to get to dominant positions consistently, even late in the fight. Yeah. Mimi says I'm wrestling biased. I am wrestling biased. I mean, that's how you win MMA fights. That's, what do you think, Legs?
I like the under here, actually. I think we're actually getting a decent number here just because in the last fight with Jackson, it kind of got extended a little bit with Ige. We kind of thought, Ige was going to easily just go in there and knock him out type of thing. I just feel like in this type of fight, it's going to be high pace from the get-go. So if Jackson isn't able to hold him down, get him down, and find a finish on the mat, I feel like Billy does finish him on the feet. So I think the under 2.5 at minus 115 is good.
Yeah, and you mentioned it to me before we came on, I actually don't think Jackson's sub is bad here. Again, it's like one of those things where like, just look at the guy, like Billy hasn't been subbed in the UFC, but I mean, Jackson is,
I mean, like you touched on, look at the grapplers he's been fighting.
Yeah. And like, honestly, we'll talk about Gavin Tucker in a bit, but Tucker got to his back pretty easy. The problem with Tucker is he's just like, he's too small to consolidate that kind of position against the bigger guy. Jackson doesn't have that issue though. I really think there's a strong chance that Jackson subs him here, honestly, but we will see. So moving on, another cool fight here. Curious about your thoughts here. Jeremiah Wells, Carlston Harris. What do you think, Lex?
Great fight for as long as it lasts, I feel like, and I want to see it last longer than I feel like it's going to, if that makes sense. But I feel like this is a very mirror match kind of a fight. Like on the feet, both these guys hit super hard, but are super reckless. Both are looking to grapple, but I don't think either is a great wrestler. I would give the wrestling edge to Harris. I feel like Wells probably does end up knocking him out. The issue for me is I just don't have a ton of footage of either guy on their back, so it's tough to have a strong read really on that. I think Harris could like end up dumpstering him because of the cardio gap later in this fight with the wrestling, but I don't have a strong take on that either.
So the cardio thing is a thing that always stands out about Wells fights, but like how many times are we going to have that conversation and then watch Jeremiah Wells look gassed and maul an opponent while looking gassed? He finished Alves in round 3. Semmelsberger, I mean, he got wobbled twice.
I think it was round 2, wasn't it? I think the Alves fight was round
yes,
2.
right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. But he absolutely fucking mauled Samuelsberger that entire fight. I'm a little, we see some of these guys that just look like they're very, very tired who just seem to know how to fight through it very well. Like Drickus, for instance, who always looks exhausted and somehow fights through it. And Wells, he seems like one of those guys to me, and he's a really explosive athlete. I do think in space, Harris is a much, much better striker. And even in the grappling, to your point, I don't really have the best read on it. It is possible that Wells just gets easily outworked in the clinch by Harris here, and Harris just mollywops him. I think early Harris numbers like plus 140 were pretty good. I missed them. I didn't take them. But I do think I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting. And I think if Wells gets on top of Harris, he could really fuck him up. But to your point, I just don't have a strong enough read on it to say anything I one way or another here. And it scares me. I'll say this. I wanted to bet Harris. It scares me how vulnerable both guys are. But even though they're both defensively vulnerable, Wells is just an insanely explosive athlete. I'm a lot more scared for Harris in exchanges than I am for Wells, even though I think Harris is probably a bit better in those exchanges. So with that dynamic, I don't know. I don't have a great read on the fight. It's going to be fun, though. I'm pretty excited for the fight.
I feel like both guys, maybe more Wells for me, is like on the fade list. And that's where I'm kind of just like, well, like I tried fading him with Court McGee, and I thought, he was pretty well rounded, and then he ended up nuking him obviously early. And the dude's got great power. It's just, who you want to end up fading him with.
Mimi
and
said
I just feel like
DJ. It's got to be Wells. He's at Henzo black belt.
Really?
Harris.
Really?
Wells is a Henzo black belt. I can't imagine Harris is a better submission grappler than Wells is.
See, I feel like if Harris is on top, I feel like he's more live to finish than Wells, but that's just me.
Yeah, that could be. Wells didn't finish Samuelsberger. That's a fair point. Look, we can't even agree on who. I don't know. I'm happy staying away from this fight and not being. I have enough bets on this card that I don't need to be invested in Jeremiah Wells and.
All right. Well, how about this then? Talk about, not that I have an interest in, but how about the under? The under 2.5 is like minus 175. I
think that's really good. Honestly, I think it's going to be kind of a fairly binary fight, so to speak. Where. One of their skill sets is going to shine through here. If one of them just turns out to be a lot better in the clinch than the other one, they're going to dominate the fight and probably finish. And they're both just massive liabilities in space.
And Harris has a massive reach advantage too, reach and size advantage.
Yeah, he does. So I lean under. I might even bet that. Moving on though, Raoni Barcelos taking on Kyler Phillips. Kyler Phillips, he is all the way juiced up at minus 212. Come back on Barcelos plus 182. Honestly, I went into tape wanting to bet Kyler Phillips in this fight. Just because Raoni's old, he's coming off a pretty brutal KO. Phillips coming back, he's young, he's athletic. And then you look into it more, and it's like, man, I do think on paper Phillips has some skills that could cause problems for Raoni here. In particular, I think guys that can kick from the outside give him serious issues. We saw that to a degree in the Umar fight, even though Umar is a lot better than Phillips is. But we also saw that in the Valiev fight. Guys who won't just stand in front of him can cause him some issues and cause margins to be pretty close. But with that said, I don't really see Phillips having a way to really get way out ahead on strikes here. In the grappling, I think they're commensurately equal wrestlers, maybe even a slight lean to Raoni there. And striking or in the pocket, I think Raoni's a better fighter. I do. I think his hands are a bit heavier. I think he's the more precise boxer here. Obviously with Raoni, it's he's old and he's coming off that KO. That's brutal. But man, Kyler Phillips, you look at it and his cardio is just it's a disaster. The Paiva fight, I could forgive because he almost finished him and you could see he was just emptying the tank. But what really sticks in my craw with Phillips, you go back and watch the Song fight, and that fight was fought at a moderate tempo. It wasn't crazy or anything like that. And he looked pretty done in round 3. Even in his last fight, I know he got the round 3 finish against Rojo, but you could see a noticeable slow collapse in output at the back end of round 2 in that fight. And so I just think him slowing down is pretty consistent here. And in a fight where exchanges should be close and competitive, both guys have a decent amount of finishing equity and both guys are similar level wrestlers. I can get the Phillips favorite just off age and, Barcelos coming off that KO. But getting out to minus 200 just seems very, very extreme to me. I like Barcelos here to win a unit. Yeah, small bet, but that's I feel like you have to take a shot here. What do you think?
Not a ton for me, honestly. I just feel like Kyler being fast, dynamic, and being a good kicker probably does end up finishing Howdy. Not much to add, really. I don't know. I guess there's not a ton of faith to have in Hayoni.
Fair enough. Moving on, Ignacio Bahamunde is taking on Ludovic Klein. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
Again, not another one. I think not a ton to break down. I feel like Klein kind of needs to finish him. I think Ignacio, higher volume, better cardio, could probably just outwork him across 15 pretty easily.
Yeah, I bet Ignacio like minus 188. I think there still might be some. It really, I don't know. It's hard to say. Minus 225.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Klein for me needs to either get a finish, like you said, or get takedowns consistently. And I'm not even sure he is capable of holding Bahamunde on the mat if he gets him down. Like you go back to like his last fight with Jai Herbert, he literally lost round 1 in top position to Jai Herbert of all people. Like I simply don't think Klein's a very good grappler. And then even taking that a step further, I think Roosevelt Roberts is probably a similar or better wrestler than Klein is, and he just couldn't get near getting Bahamunde down. Like it's fairly clear to me Bahamunde has worked on his defensive wrestling quite a bit. So I think Baha probably can keep this upright. I love this. Pepe said it's sub 2-3 at big numbers. Like Klein will slow, and like Bahamunde's, man, he's got that gigantic frame and those gigantically long arms. I can easily see him wrapping up like a Darce or something. But yeah, in terms of the fight, I mean, just the output difference is comical here. Bahamunde hasn't landed less than 93 significant strikes in a fight. I don't think Klein's landed more than 60 in a fight. And Klein is consistently getting outworked by his opponents. I'm on top of which you just think about just the dimensions here that Klein is up against. I mean, it's really crazy. He's giving up 8 inches in height and only 3 inches in reach, which is pretty surprising. But still, that's a lot of height. I just feel like Bahamunde is going to be able to touch him up pretty consistently. He's got better cardio. He's got better output. Klein's best hope is to like clip him early in this fight, I think. But, Bahamunde should really own him the later this fight goes. What do you think? Or you already talked about it?
Yeah, but I will give you the sub 2 and sub 3 numbers that are on Bet on.
Let's get
Bet Online has 13-1 for sub 2 and 15-1 for sub 3.
Don't hate it. Moving on though, Tanner Bozer coming back to fight a light heavyweight for a second time, taking on Alexa Kammer, who's coming back off a 2-year layoff. Bozer minus 145, comeback on Kammer plus 125. What are your thoughts here, Legs?
This is a weird fight, man. And I want to bet Bozer, I feel like, but it's tough to bet him against a guy who has some sense of a grappling background, really, just because Bozer doesn't have much of a sense at all. But I just don't think Kammer's much good at anything. I don't think he's a great striker. I think Bozer can outstrike him pretty easily here. I think he is a more powerful striker, too. I'll shout out Chad. Chad gave a good play with the Bozer no scorecards, like minus 115. I think that's a good way to look at this fight.
Yeah. I'm not betting it, but I sort of kind of lean the Kammer side here just because I don't – it's weird. Like I don't feel strongly about it, but I also kind of feel like Bozer doesn't really belong at 205. Like his skill set really worked well for heavyweight as a guy with very good cardio and very high output who throws a lot of kicks. Like not many heavyweights do that. Whereas at 205, it's like he's a guy with limited power who can't grapple, who's a lot slower than a lot of the guys he's fighting. It's just not something you really – I just don't understand the move, frankly. Like it's not like he's going to come to 205.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like his body is more suited for 205, but his fighting style is heavyweight. Like
perfect for heavyweight. Yeah. And that Kammer, I don't like Kammer per se, but I mean he's 27 years old. The guy has been off for 2 years, and I think it's fair to assume he's gotten a lot better. He's got decent striking metrics. I think he's a decent boxer. He outboxed. Fuck is his name? My God. Hold on 1 second. I can't believe I'm taking this.
Mariano last fight?
No, Mariano sucks. Justin Ledet, who actually is a pretty good boxer. He did outbox Mariano. I thought he won that fight, to be quite honest. But yeah, look, I mean, Bozer on paper, you would think has the tools to win this fight. Obviously the leg kicks, but he's got zero grappling upside here. Bozer at this point, he's not getting better. He kind of is what he is. He's got solid cardio and solid output. I didn't like how he was reacting to shots against Dion, though, down at 205 in his last fight. And now he's fighting a 27-year-old who will keep a high pace as well, who throws a lot more head strikes than Bozer does, who may mix in takedowns here and there. He has in the past. And so, like, with that dynamic, like, I favor Bozer. He's a more experienced fighter. He's fought better competition. I think you have to favor him. But I do think Hammer randomly showing up, or not even randomly, Hammer showing up a lot better and just shit stomping Bozer, or just generally speaking, them being in a competitive striking match for 15 minutes seems like fairly live outcome here to me. Not passionate about it. Can't bet Hammer at this price, but yeah, that's kind of how I lean here. Moving on, my biggest spot of the card here, we got Gavin Tucker taking on Diego Lopes. I like Tucker quite a bit. Honestly, I have 2 units on him. I'd probably go bigger if it wasn't for the 2.5-year layoff. Obviously, that is a concern at 37 years of age. But I look at the fight and I don't see a single area where Diego Lopes is better at MMA than Gavin Tucker. Like, not one. Doesn't have better cardio. He's the worst wrestler. He's the worst striker by a pretty large margin here. The 2 big things Lopes has on his side is that he's 28 years old and he has a gigantic size advantage here. But like, you look at it on the feet and, you know, I do think Lopes could clip him and knock him out. Frankly, that's what I think I'm most scared of in this fight is Tucker just timing an entry into the pocket wrong and eating one of those hooks. But Lopes tends to just sit down on his shots, like just sit down and fire wild hooks. And for a guy like Tucker, whose entire style is movement-based, that's kind of like perfectly set up for him to kind of just bait some of that out and just easily tag Lopes on the counter. Tucker's clearly the better wrestler, in my opinion. Is it possible that Lopes is better at jiu-jitsu than Tucker? Maybe. But Tucker's like a legit black belt. Like, I would be very surprised if Tucker got subbed and it wasn't a club and sub. And so, like, I look at the fight. It's like Gavin Tucker 2 fights ago absolutely shit kicked Billy Currantillo in a way nobody has. Then last fight comes out there, literally the first punch that gets thrown, he gets knocked unconscious. Now he's been off for 2.5 years. And everybody's forgotten about him. Endor thinks he's washed, I guess. Other side, you have Diego Lopes, who, you know, got dominated by Brito on Contender Series, just got taken down and held down as he tried to just throw up stupid submissions off his back. And then in his last fight, you know, people are like, oh my God, he gave Evloev a real fight. And it's like, hold up. This guy got outlanded 80-35 in significant strikes. He got outlanded like 180-48 in total strikes, and he got controlled for 9.5 minutes on the fight. Okay, he had 2 deep sub attempts. You know who else had 2 deep sub attempts against Movsar Evloev? Nick Lenz, Mike Grundy. Like, those guys had very deep sub attempts against him. Evloev just doesn't really worry about putting himself in those spots. Maybe it'll bite him in the ass one day, but that's the truth. The guy's just not concerned about it. And so that fight, it's like, other than those sub attempts, Evloev kicked the absolute shit out of him. Brito kicked the absolute shit out of him. And other than those 2 fights, he's fought nothing but bums. And now he's fighting a guy who was literally a favorite or even money with Dan Ige in a top 15 fight in his last fight. And we're saying that Tucker is 40% implied. Like, to me, to get to Tucker plus 150, your baseline assumption has to be Tucker has lost like a lot here, that he's gone like very, very downhill. Because even if he is like, you know, gone downhill a little bit, I still think fundamentally he's got a great game to beat Lopes. And if he hasn't gone downhill much, he should be like a decent sized favorite, in my opinion. I just don't really understand I don't get what people are seeing in it. It honestly makes me a bit nervous. It seems like everybody's betting Lopes this week, but I feel like Tucker's the better fighter literally everywhere. I think he could blanket him if he wants and just grind him out. And I think he could just outstrike him, frankly. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm probably going to end up having a bet on Tucker myself, honestly. And the only reason why I was holding back really was because the layoff, 2.5 years and 35.
It's a long time.
It's
37 now.
Well, that's what I'm saying, at 35. 35, having that 2-year layoff. Now it's 37. Tough. But, like, better striker, better wrestler. When you touched on submission grappling, I think he has better cardio, too. And it's not like Gavin has bad durability either.
No,
and not like Lopez.
A huge hitter.
Right. Yeah, not much more to add, really. I feel like Lopes getting a ton of credit for, again, overperforming in a debut where I feel like he really didn't, if you're actually like taking a look at the fight. But yeah, no. Again, similar worries though to you on the feet. Like Lopes not too super high volume, but sits down on his shots, has some power. But I don't think his wrestling's that good either.
Yeah, well, that's kind of my point. I
Right.
what
That fight
Pepe
was
just said.
that fight was embarrassing to rewatch.
The Richardson fight, yeah. He's not it's very weird because if you go back to when Tucker was last in the UFC, so he got destroyed by Ricky Glenn in 2017, took 2 years off. He comes back and absolutely dominates Sungwoo Choi, who's pretty good, Justin James, who sucks, but then dominates Billy Quarantillo, wins every round, and then he gets knocked out by Dan Ige. It's it's very weird to me because Gavin Tucker, there's nothing about his game to see. We haven't seen any performance to suggest that Gavin Tucker's gone over a cliff. Maybe he will, and this is that time, but we've seen a lot to suggest Diego Lopes isn't very good at MMA. And
I was going to say, even in a stylistic matchup, him going over a cliff, how does Lopes capitalize on that? Maybe he snatches up a knee bar or something like that. If he ends up on the ground,
has to be gone, maybe because much is movement. He's so movement based in what he does, but even that, I feel like Tucker is a clever enough fighter. And he is a very clever fighter when you watch him, and a clever enough striker that he could literally still have Lopes swinging at air, even if he has slowed, significantly here.
Yeah.
I don't really see any way that we look at this fight and it's dominant Lopes 30-27. Whereas it's very, very easy to imagine Tucker just kicking the shit out of him, in my opinion.
I feel like Lopes, and again, not to pigeonhole here, but I feel like he kind of needs a finish to cover minus 180 here.
Definitely.
I mean, it's hard to not argue that.
For Lopes to come out here and own on minutes, he's going to have to really, really level up his game, and Gavin's going to have to really, really decline his game. I agree with that. His physique doesn't look great, but, we roll, we move. Yeah, we'll see what happens. I like Gavin Tucker here. The governor, we're supporting it. Canada's last hope. Anyway, moving on. Dustin Jacoby, Kennedy and Sejiku. I'm surprised by this line. I'm curious on your take. Kennedy minus 160. Come back on Jacoby plus 140. What are your thoughts here?
This is going to be a great fight. Great fight. Honestly, I feel like the line, where it's at, is more or less fine, just because I feel like Kennedy can own in the grappling. But at space, Kennedy's still pretty hittable, but I feel like he has, in his last recent couple fights, really just utilized the clinch, utilized the grappling. So I feel like that's probably what he's going to do here. I like the under. I would lean the under, I should say. I'm not looking for a bet, just because I feel like on the feet, Jacoby could knock him out for sure. Kennedy, I feel like, doesn't have a ton of standing KO equity. I feel like it's mostly a grappling based finish. So I don't know. The under for me is just kind of wishy-washy.
Yeah, I bet Jacoby. Honestly, my biggest concern in the fight is grappling, but at the same time, you can't compare Dustin Jacoby to Carl Roberson. Carl Roberson, legitimately one of the worst to ever do it when it comes to grappling. Yeah, it's just horrendous. You look at Jacoby, there have been guys that tried to grapple him. Grishin got him down a couple times. Obviously, Kudalaba took him down 7 or 8 times in the first round in their fight. But he doesn't accept bottom position. He bounces up right away. And I haven't seen much from Kennedy's jiu-jitsu to suggest he's much of a danger to really throw in a standing body triangle against Jacoby. So if that's not the case, yes, he has grappling upside, but I don't think he's very likely to control Jacoby flat on the mat, if that makes sense. I'd be surprised if we got a rerun of the Roberson shot. And then you look at the striking. I mean, dude, Kennedy's had some really horrendous striking performances. You want to go back to that Roberson fight. Every time that fight was in space, Roberson was absolutely lighting him up. This is a guy. Now, granted, I think it was a robbery, but it's a guy who was way too competitive standing with Nikolai Negumarianu. Even Devin Clark rocked him at distance in his last fight. The Daun Jung fight literally went out soft to an elbow. He does not win minutes at distance. I think he got outlanded by Darko Stosic a few years ago at distance. Whereas Jacoby has very, very high volume and generally lands way more than his opponents do. So it's Jacoby's margins can be thin at times because he doesn't grapple. He throws a lot of kicks. But I'm expecting him to comfortably outland Kennedy at distance. In terms of finishing equity, I guess you could give Kennedy an edge. But like you said, I'm not sure Kennedy's much more of a hitter than Jacoby is. He doesn't – most of the damage he does tends to be in the clinch. He doesn't like really hurt too many guys standing at distance. And Jacoby, I actually think is kind of an underrated hitter. Like he knocked out who's the fucking bum or Ledet, knocked out Justin Ledet. He's hurt a bunch of other guys. He actually has like some sharp strikes, and Kennedy is there to get clipped. So like I look at the fight, it's like, yeah, maybe make it a closely lined fight because Kennedy has some grappling equity, but I don't see any way that you can say Kennedy's likely to win minutes on the feet in this fight. I just can't see it. Yeah, I know Jacoby lost to Mirzakhanov, but the speed difference in that fight to this fight, it was insane. Mirzakhanov is fast as fuck, and Kennedy is not. And he's got a lot more hardware than what Kennedy's packing. So yeah, I lean Jacoby in this fight. I think he should be picked a small favorite. It would be how I'd cap it. But I just think his volume is just so much more reliable than Kennedy's. And unless Kennedy gets him flat on the mat here, how is he covering minus one, a 60% implied number?
Yep. Fair.
So we'll see. Moving on. I'm not going to call it a great fight, but we got Tatiana Suarez taking on Jessica Androg. Suarez minus 355, comeback under Androg plus 290. It's funny. I saw Clint post this the other day. He posted a bet on Androg, and he almost have forgot next to it. And credit to Clint. He's been absolutely smashing this year.
Yep.
But I saw y'all must have forgot, and I was tempted to comment, yeah, y'all must have forgot that Tatiana Suarez is the best female grappler in history. Look, I am I laying the price? No. Just because, but I wouldn't. Let me put it this way: if I knew she was healthy, I would lay this price against Jessica Androg. I'm not kidding. I didn't love the De La Rosa look. Granted, it was up a weight class, so maybe don't put too much in it. But it's like 3.5 years off from neck surgery, and then comes back and looks kind of sketchy against De La Rosa. I want to see her turn in a dominant performance before I get put my money on her again. But I do look at the fight, and it's like Suarez is. I mean, Carla Suarez is one of the best women's wrestlers in MMA history, and Suarez literally destroyed this woman. Alexa Grasso, female champion, got run through by Tatiana Suarez. She's an unreal wrestler. She's a very good submission grappler. She throws great ground and pound. And Androg, she's not a very good defensive wrestler. She tends to give her back to get back up in these fights. I think about the fight, and if it goes 15 minutes, Androg has probably somewhere between 3 and 6 minutes in space. Can I really say she's better than 25% to knock Suarez out cold there? No, probably even less than that, because I'd guess they're going to be limiting engagements, and Androg is going to be fairly cautious about how she tries to enter because of the takedown threat. Yeah, I mean, Suarez's skill set, if she's healthy, is a cheat code, and she is going to win the championship if she's healthy. I will tell you guys this right now. The eventual even money line on Tatiana Suarez against Weili Zhang is going to be a max bet of epic proportions. What do you think about this fight, Legs?
Not much more to add. I think Tatiana dominates in the grappling here. Probably makes it look easy.
Yeah, that's unless she's fucked. She might be fucked. We don't know. That's
right.
It would be a tragedy. But if her health is compromised enough, that's how,
Right, and I know it's easy to just be like, oh, give her a pass for it, but it's hard not to. You know what I mean? Like having that long of a layoff, fighting up a weight class, and now you're coming back. She's fighting at the right weight class, 115. It's hard not to give her a pass. It's wild kind of seeing this number though after that. But
it is.
Probably deservingly so though.
It is. It's just I can't. I tried to think about it. It's how do you get to we're thinking about it. Not with data that we're going to have after this fight. It's with the data we had before. And it's very hard for me to, even if we get 90% of what Suarez was and not a full 100%, it's just very, because I don't see any decision equity for Androg in this fight, literally, unless Suarez just shows up with AIDS, that's really it. How does Androg win a decision? You tell me. I don't see it.
No, I don't.
Yep. So the line seems reasonable to me. Moving on, Cory Sandhagen, Rob Font coming off cashing the podcast. A nice big bet against Adrian Yanez. Sandhagen minus 350, come back on Font plus 285. I don't know. There's a part of me seeing that line that wants to bet Font just because I do like Font's game. He's a big guy and Sandhagen hasn't fought many big guys. He's one of the few guys in the division who can match Cory's output. and actually throws with some heat himself. He probably has more power, or I even say probably, he definitely has more power in his hands than Cory has. And he could potentially get a takedown or two in this fight. And so, I mean, I'm kind of tempted by the plus 285. At the same time, though, seeing how fast his eye swelled up against Yanez again is pretty hugely concerning to me. Like there really seems to be something wrong with that eye, that he's just breaking the orbital every time he fights. Like the first time someone lands heavy, like he broke it in round 1 against Aldo, broke it in round 1 against Vera, broke it early against Yanez. That's a huge concern for me, especially over 5 rounds against a guy like Sandhagen, who throws a lot of attritional strikes that can damage that. On top of which, I was a bit less concerned against Yanez about Font being 36, because, I mean, Yanez was taking such a massive leap in competition going into that fight. I just I don't really care that he's that age.
Randy Costa.
Right. Randy, yeah. Randy Costa, Tony Kelly, and into Rob Font. That's easy to bet Rob Font in that spot. Yeah. Cory Sandhagen is not Randy Costa or Tony Kelly or Adrian Yanez. Cory Sandhagen's one of the best 3 or 4 fighters at 135 pounds in the world, who's 30 and literally at the peak of his powers, coming off an absolutely dominant performance against Cheeto. I am
I bet there too.
Yeah, he did.
Sorry to cut you off there.
I'm a lot more worried about Rob in that kind of fight. First of all, because I think Sandhagen's more durable at this point in their careers. Like, Rob still got okay durability, but obviously it is not what it was. We can see that pretty clearly. Oh, yeah. And Cory's got absolutely insane durability. And then even in the grappling, I saw Ozzy mention this the other day. Ozzy P, shout out to Ozzy Martian. But Rob looked really bad on bottom against Aldo the couple times Aldo got on top of him. I think he got controlled for 9 minutes in that fight. And Aldo's an all-time great, and he's a good grappler, but he's not like a smothering, mauling grappler. And that makes me pretty concerned, if Rob goes for takedowns, about him getting swept and Cory ending up on top. Or, we saw Cory go for takedowns last fight against Cheeto, and against Song Yadong. If Cory gets on top of him, I think he's the much better jiu-jitsu player by a lot, and he just does a lot more damaging shit there. So I look at it, it's man, it seems like a big number on Cory. But again, yeah, Cory is in his prime and at the top of this division. Rob is clearly not in his prime. I love Rob Font. I am a Rob Font fan, but he is not the guy that he once was. He's still very good, but I don't think Rob Font is coming for the title or anything like that, So I'm okay kind of staying away from it. There's the eye, the potential cliff danger, the grappling, it all scares me. Something I am interested in, I'm kind of annoyed that the plus money under got eaten up here, but I am kind of tempted by the under at minus 125. It is going to be a very high-paced fight, and Cory does finish a lot of guys, and he throws a lot of nasty shit, with elbows, knees, is a threat submission-wise. So I'm kind of tempted there. What do you think, Legs?
So 2 things. So 1, Rob isn't coming for any titles other than the BMF title, because Rob is fighting the hardest fights. He's taken all the hard fights.
It's true.
It is. I mean, Aldo, Cheeto, Yanez, and Cory now on short notice. What can you say?
And Cheeto was short notice as well.
What I will say about the under, because I do agree with you that I do like the under. The only problem that I see with the under is, like you alluded to a little bit with Cory. Cory durability just seems unreal, insane. even though Rob's power does seem insane. It seems way more Cory skewed than anything. And I agree, the number did seem big, but Cory's super fast, dynamic. It just seems like the perfect archetype for a guy like Font.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I would lean under if anything.
Well, that's the thing, right? Because so much of Font's game is I'm going to pump more volume than you. And nobody pumps more volume than Cory does. So it's if you take that away and now you have the guy who has more submission upside, more finishing upside, certainly, who's younger, faster at this point. Yeah, more dynamic. Yeah. It's not that hard to suddenly see why Font would be 25% to win this fight, So yeah, I think Cory's going to win. I'm kind of tempted by the under, but yeah, it is odds. It's Font's never been finished. The next time will be the first time. No, I do think Cory can finish him. And I don't think Cory's. Oh no, Aljo finished Cory to go.
Yeah, that's it. But that's the only time he's been finished, and he's never been knocked out too. So it's kind of weird with that dynamic too, because I feel like it's going to be high paced. So the minus 135 on the no seems good, but also at the same time, both guys haven't really been finished.
I could see Font running into like a flying knee or something like that. Though.
Oh, yeah.
Like the way he came
That's
for
what I'm saying.
Cheetah.
Yeah, the dynamic shit.
Yeah. And like he's going to go super hard at Cory, and I think it could open up some opportunities for Cory to hit some big shit here, honestly.
Yeah, the body work too.
Yeah,
nice
agree.
for Cory.
So yeah, I think we both lean Cory here. Yeah, it's gonna be a fun card. Hopefully, I'm praying to Jesus. It's a better card than the last couple have been. We'll see what happens. Oh yeah, no, Pepe's right. Munoz choked out Rob Font. He's been choked out before. He's not been KO'd before.
Did I not say that?
I said he never been finished before. I said he was never finished before. Yeah,
gotcha.
That was my mistake. But yeah, hopefully this card goes well. I'm excited for it. Should be Nashville. Will be banging. Yeah.
Should be
Let's go.
Card.
So guys, if you like the show, drop a like, subscribe, share, all that fun shit. Help us out. As usual, I'm John. You can find me on Twitter at MMA Fox. That's Lags. You can find him on Twitter at Danny_Lags. We'll be back here same time next week, 7 p.m. Eastern, talking Vicente Luque versus Rafael Dos Anjos. Have a good weekend, everybody, and good luck on your bets. Peace.